From ABC News, around the world and into your home, the stories that touch your life. This is 2020 with Barbara Walters, Diane Sawyer, Sam Donaldson, Connie Chung, Charles Gibson, and Hugh Downs. Tonight.
You have been described as a bimbo, a stalker, a seductress.
Barbara Walters with Monica Lewinsky, a woman guaranteed a place in history, finally free to tell her own story of the affair that nearly toppled the president.
Sometimes I have warm feelings, sometimes I'm proud of him still, and sometimes I hate his guts.
You'll hear how it all began and where it led.
I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate.
I felt like a piece of trash. I felt dirty.
About the moments she cherished still.
He was very tender with me. He was very affectionate.
And the time she'd rather forget.
You would scream at him in person. You would threaten him. The President of the United States.
Then, her feelings about Betty Curry, Vernon Jordan, Kenneth Starr, and Linda Tripp.
Linda Tripp says she would like to give you a hug. What would you like to give Linda Tripp?
Why did Monica confide in Linda Tripp and later try to protect the president?
I had had a relationship with a married man before, and I knew the rules.
You'll understand the president as you may never have before, and the woman desperate to love him.
Where was your self-respect? Where was your self-esteem?
Plus, the secret she has never revealed, and questions that have not been answered until now.
Did you feel that you were in competition with Hillary Clinton?
Tonight, the private affair, the national scandal, the public fallout. Monica Lewinsky describes it all in her own words. This 2-hour presentation, March 3rd, 1999. And now, Barbara Walters.
Good evening. For the past year, Monica Lewinsky has been forced to reveal aspects of her relationship with the President of the United States. Tonight, for the first time, she has chosen to tell her story, from the private flirtation with President Clinton to the public nightmare of the aftermath. Miss Lewinsky, who had just turned 22 when she first met Bill Clinton, is now 25. She has done this interview with no payment of any kind, and we could ask her whatever we wanted. There are, however, some restrictions still imposed on her by the Office of the Independent Counsel, headed by Kenneth Starr. Only one of them affected this interview. Miss Lewinsky is unable to comment on the conduct of the prosecutors or their investigation, including the traumatic day that she herself was first interrogated. But I am free to report on the events of that day. So, here now we bring you Monica in her own words. Monica, you have been described as a bimbo, a stalker, a seductress. Describe yourself.
I think I'm very loving. I'm very loyal. I think I'm intelligent. I think I certainly feel that I have been misportrayed in the past year, and unfairly so.
This is the first time that you have really been able to speak out and say pretty much anything you wanted to say. Is there something that you particularly do want to say at this point?
Yes. I waited a long time to be able to express to the country how very sorry I am for my part in this past year's ordeal. And of course, I've apologized in private to my family and to my friends, but I would like to publicly acknowledge that I recognize the pain and the suffering that they've gone through because of this. I wouldn't dream of asking Chelsea and Mrs. Clinton to forgive me, but I would ask them to know that I am very sorry for what happened and for what they've been through.
Do you take responsibility for what happened?
Not complete responsibility. It took me a while, actually, to come to a place where I could see what was my fault, what did I need to take responsibility for, and what were other people's faults and responsibilities.
The woman in the nation's spotlight is a product of Beverly Hills, affluence, and divorce. Monica's parents separated when she was 14 years old. She had a difficult relationship with her father, a doctor who treats cancer patients, but was very close to her mother.
Now, woman, no kiss on the very first day.
She found an outlet for her energies in school plays and loved to perform.
Now I can take the time. I can see my life.
All of her life, she has struggled with her weight. In her teens, the weight problem made her feel isolated and unpopular. By the time she was 18, she found the attention she craved in the wrong place. She got involved with a married man. While you were in high school and then in college, you had an affair with a man who worked at your high school named Andy Blyler. It was on again, off again. I mean, you really cared about him. And eventually, when the story broke, he turned against you. And that was probably very painful. But can you describe what Andy Blyler meant in your life?
Yes. Andy came into my life at during a very difficult period for me. I have always had issues with my weight. That is not a secret to anybody now. And growing up in Beverly Hills, having a weight problem was just not acceptable. And Andy brought to my life a feeling of beauty and sensuality and being wanted and being comfortable with myself. He brought me something, I think, which is a big part of who I am today, which is, for me, and I know it's funny, but is being comfortable with my sensuality. So.
One juror at the grand jury asked you why you kept having affairs with married men. Why did you? Why do you?
I have to say that was the most difficult question to answer in my entire experience with the grand jury. It was the most pointed question. First, I hope I never will have, I know I never will have an affair with a married man again. I have to pray about that. But clearly, to me, what I've come to see is that that happened because I didn't have enough feelings of self-worth, so that I didn't feel that I was worthy of being number one to a man. And
so you had to take whatever you could get? You came to Washington as an intern. Were you interested in politics?
No, I wasn't. I was looking to get away from Andy in Portland, and it was a good opportunity. I thought it would be intriguing.
You testified that shortly after your internship began, that you and the president began what you described as intense flirting. When did you see him? What was this intense flirting like?
The first time I saw him was at an arrival ceremony. And my breath was taken away. I mean, he sort of stepped out onto the platform, and it was this man who was full of energy and sensuality and attractiveness. And from that moment on, the few occasions when I saw him at departure ceremonies or whatnot, there was intense eye contact.
This photograph was taken before you actually began your relationship with the president. Yes?
Yes.
What does this bring to you? What thoughts?
Intensity.
He recognizes you here. He's looking at you.
This was his birthday party in August of '95. When I found out we were going to be able to go to this birthday party, I'd gone home and put my lucky green suit back on, which I had had the day before, and I thought, well, maybe he'll recognize me again. And there was an excitement about it. It was fun.
Okay, you've had this flirtation with the president at mostly public affairs or places where birthday parties, other things. November 15th, 1995, the government is shut down. The interns take on greater responsibility at the White House. And on that day, you found yourself alone with Bill Clinton in the Chief of Staff's office, and you lifted the back of your jacket and you showed the President of the United States your thong underwear. Where did you get the nerve? I mean, who does that?
I'm sure, as you know, and everybody who has ever been in any situation where there's flirtation, it's a dance. And it's sort of one person does something, and then do you meet that person and raise the stakes? And that was how our flirtation relationship was progressing. It was a very, I know that it sort of has been highlighted in everything in this past year. And I'm not going to demonstrate for you, but I will, if you take my word for it, it was a small, subtle, flirtatious gesture. And that's me.
Was it saying, I'm available?
Well, I think it was saying, I'm interested too. I'll play.
That evening, the president invited you to see him privately. What did you say?
Well, when I first found myself alone with him, I was very nervous, and we were having small talk, and I remember thinking to myself, okay, well, this is it. If this is going to happen, I mean, maybe you should let him know you're interested. So I blurted out, you know, I have a crush on you. And that was his cue, I guess, that it was okay for him to proceed in what he wanted and what he was feeling. And
he kissed you?
Yes.
What'd you think?
He's a good kisser.
How did it become so intimate so quickly?
This may be hard for people to hear or accept. I've said it before, I thought he was my sexual soulmate. And there was, I think when you allow yourself to open up that way, things happen.
You are a very sensual young woman, passionate.
Yes.
Is Bill Clinton a sensuous, passionate man?
Gosh, I'll probably get in trouble for saying this, but
not in any more trouble than you have already been in, Monica.
I have immunity. I'm okay.
You have immunity here.
For now. I think he is I think he's a very sensual man who has a lot of sensual feelings, and I think he also has a very strong religious upbringing, and I think that he struggles with his sensuality because I don't think he thinks it's okay, and that I think he tries to hold himself back and then can't anymore.
That first encounter, the president took a phone call from a congressman while you were very closely together. How did you feel about that?
And it was certainly a very, I mean, it's an intimate topic. There was a level of excitement about that. Excitement and maybe a little bit of danger that was involved in this relationship. And to pretend that there wasn't wouldn't be truthful.
Didn't make you feel cheap?
No,
okay.
It didn't. It did not at that point, no.
Now, the second time that you were the president, you took his shirt off?
I think he unbuttoned his shirt, and it was one of the more endearing moments that I had with him. I mean, I sort of...
The president sort of sucked in his stomach, as a lot of men or women would do.
As I did.
As you did.
He was just, all of a sudden, became very real and very human.
You've always been very self-conscious about your weight.
Yes.
Did Bill Clinton make you feel good about that? Did he talk to you about that?
Yes, he was very, very understanding and very sweet about it. And I think because he knew I was so conscious of it, he would make an effort to say to me, "Oh, you look like you've lost weight," or "You look skinny today," or something like that. It was sweet. May have not been true, but sweet.
2 months after your first meeting, it was then your 5th sexual encounter, and you said to Bill Clinton, "Is this only About sex, or do you have some interest in trying to get to know me as a person? What did he say to you then?
Oh, he, everyone would probably find it hard to believe. He started to tear up and told me that he never wanted me to think that, and that that's not what this relationship was about.
Did he say things that, you know, why he was drawn to you?
Yes.
Like what?
He said that I had a lot of energy and that I lit up a room when I walked in, and he was drawn to my energy, and he thought I was attractive, and he thought I was smart.
Smart enough to sneak in and out of one of the most secure places in the world, the Oval Office.
Ms. Curry's office is here, and that connects into the Oval Office, and there's a door over here that leads into a back hallway.
And it was in that hallway and in the adjacent study and bathroom that many of her trysts with the president took place. Ingenuity triumphed over security.
There are all sorts of ways to get in and out of there.
I see. So it's not just in the Oval Office, out of the Oval
No.
Office. Did you or the president worry about somebody coming in and finding you?
Yes.
You did?
Yes.
Was this part of the thrill?
It wasn't for me. I don't think it was for me.
During those weeks, did you ever say to yourself, I'm doing something wrong? This is bad for the president. This is bad for the country. Did you ever think about that?
Now with everything that's happened, I feel bad that I didn't, but I didn't at that time. I was enamored with him, and I was excited, and I was enjoying it.
Monica, the president and you talked about how you could explain your frequent visits to the Oval Office, and he said that you could say that you were delivering papers to Betty Curry or just coming to see her. So from the very beginning, you knew that you had to deny this relationship. You knew that you had to lie.
I had had a relationship with a married man before, and I knew the rules. So yes.
I don't want to get too personal, but whenever I say I don't want to get too personal, but then you know it's...
Well, I'm out of here.
The impression that the president gave was that this was a one-way street, that he was gratified and you were not. But the truth is that you were gratified.
Yes.
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 And that there were things that were done that made you feel, as a woman, happy and contented.
Yes.
Okay. But her happiness had its limitations. There were physical boundaries, and the president was not a free man. There was, after all, a wife and a daughter. When we come back, Monica takes us into this intimate territory. Did you ever think about what Hillary Clinton might be feeling or would feel if she knew? As we have seen, Monica Lewinsky's relationship with President Clinton began with a light-hearted flirtation and quickly became far more intimate. But in Monica's view, there was much more than sex. As you will now hear, she fell in love with Bill Clinton and thought he might actually leave his wife and marry her. Indeed, in a new book, Monica's Story, written by British author Andrew Morton, the president is described in the early days of the affair as a lovesick teenager. First, though, there is the nature of the physical relationship itself, a question that was critical at President Clinton's impeachment trial. You have said that oral sex is not a sexual relationship, that you call it what?
Messing around.
Messing around. Okay.
Fooling around.
So then how would you describe the relationship? I mean, would you say that it was non-sexual?
No. I was able to, in my mind, say we didn't have a sexual relationship because we didn't have intercourse. But that it was in a sort of loose way, it was a sexual relationship.
Throughout most of the relationship, the oral sex was not brought to completion for the president.
Correct.
Why not? What did he say?
It's embarrassing. He said that at first he said that he needed to be able to trust me more, and that then over time it was him not wanting to get addicted to me, his words. So,
did you ever tell Bill Clinton that you were in love with him?
yes.
You did. What did he say?
He said that means a lot to me.
Did he ever tell you that he was in love with you?
No.
How much of the infatuation do you think was Bill Clinton, and how much was that it was the President of the United States?
I think the initial attraction had more to do with it being the president, and yes, I found him attractive, but I think that I came to see him more as a man than as a president.
And over the course of the relationship, you and Bill Clinton exchanged gifts, and one of them that he gave you was this book, Leaves of Grass by Walt Whitman.
Yes.
And you have said that of all of the gifts, this had the most meaning to you. Monica, did you know that this book, Leaves of Grass, was a book given by the president to Hillary Clinton as the first gift he gave to her?
No, I didn't know that at the time. I came to learn that in this past year.
Well, knowing this, does it make you feel better or worse?
I guess a mix of the two. Clearly, I guess it's something he gave to people that meant something to him, but at the same time, it takes away the genuineness of the gesture.
In the early days of your relationship, Bill Clinton called you every 4 or 5 days. You had over 50 telephone conversations. I mean, that's an enormous amount of conversations, and most of them were late at night. Now, sometimes you did what you call phone sex. A lot of people don't know what phone sex is. As best you can explain it.
You and Mr. Jordan.
Phil and Jordan didn't understand it either, as I remember, yeah.
It's a way of being intimate over the phone when you can't be intimate in person. Physically intimate.
Physically intimate?
Oh, gosh. I'm talking about... That's so embarrassing. What we would do if we could be with each other at that time.
I think I get it.
Good. It's fun.
And during the relationship, you told friends that you thought that you and Bill Clinton might have a future together. You fantasized about marrying him. You even asked Vernon Jordan if he thought that the president would leave the First Lady at the end of his presidency. Did Bill Clinton say anything to give you hope that this might really happen?
He did. The president and I were having a very intimate discussion, and he said that he wished he had more time for me. And I said, thinking, well, sure, you're pretty busy, you are the president, that, well, maybe in 3 years you might, when he doesn't have such a overwhelming job. And he said, well, I might be alone in 3 years. And I was very stunned to hear him say that. And so I said, well, I think we'd be a good team. And he said, well, what are we going to do when I'm 75 and have to pee 25 times a day? And so it was, I mean, that to me certainly indicated that it was a thought that crossed his mind.
Did you ever meet Hillary Clinton?
I wouldn't say that I've met her and spoken with her in a way that I would feel I know her. It was very briefly, more handshakes. Handshake.
Monica, did you feel that you were in competition with Hillary Clinton?
Sometimes. Sure. I think you need to look at that as that she was the wife of this man that I was in love with.
When you saw Hillary Clinton, sometimes she was with the president, did he then acknowledge you in any way?
Yes.
Smiling, saying something?
Yes.
So he would be with her, but you would still know that he was looking at you or thinking of you.
Mm-hmm.
Did you ever think about what Hillary Clinton might be feeling or would feel if she knew? Did you ever think about Hillary Clinton?
I did. I think I thought about her a lot, but I never thought she would find out. I was never going to talk about this publicly.
Did you ever think about Chelsea?
I did in... This is sort of a hard thing to explain, but because I cared so much about the president, and she means the world to him. I mean, she is the most precious thing to him. I had a very strong affinity for her, even having never met her, not having any interaction with her, and wanted good things for her.
Now, approximately 5 months into the relationship, you were transferred to the Pentagon. Obviously, there were people who felt that you should be kept away from the president.
The meanies.
Well, you called them the meanies, but in a way, they were right, weren't they?
I don't think so. I don't think that my relationship hurt the job he was doing. It didn't hurt the work I was doing. It was between us. And I don't think it was their business, actually.
She was transferred, and the president did nothing to stop it. Instead, according to Monica, he promised her emphatically that if he were re-elected in the fall, he would, without fail, bring her back to work at the White House. After your transfer to the Pentagon, which was in April of 1996, you didn't see the president privately for almost a year. He was obviously trying to stay away from you. But you would show up again and again at public places where he would see you, hoping that he would then call you, see you, so forth. Why didn't you leave him alone and just get on with your life?
Oh, I guess I take issue even with the way that's characterized. It was, we couldn't see each other because of the election. There was, and at least that's what I was led to believe. We talked on the phone even more after I left the White House, and that was where a lot of the relationship deepened. I would go to the public events to see him because that was the only place I could see him, and we would have our own intimate exchanges. At that point, I would not say that that was an issue of him wanting to get rid of me and I wouldn't leave him alone. After all, he was the one who had to pick up the phone and call me. I had no way to get in touch with him then. I couldn't send him a letter or call him.
Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States.
November 6, 1996, the day after Bill Clinton was re-elected. A welcome home ceremony for the triumphant president and vice president on the south lawn of the White House. Political appointees like Monica Lewinsky were invited. You've seen this picture before, but this was a big day for Monica. She was sure that the president would make good on his pre-election promise, that he would call and ask her back to the White House. She sat up all night. There was no phone call.
It was devastating for me.
That he didn't care.
That he didn't call. You hear from someone for months and months, and all you're talking about is, I can't wait till I can hold you again. I can't wait till I can kiss you again. I'm going to bring you back. What do you want to do? Whatever you want.
And he doesn't call.
And I was young. At this point, I was 23. And I'm not a patient person, so it was difficult.
Did you feel that Bill Clinton was in love with you?
There were times I did.
What made you feel that way?
It was the way he looked at me and the way he held me and the way he touched me. I think you feel that warmth with someone.
What kinds of things did he say to you that made you feel this was not just sex?
First of all, I think one of the things that people have not been able to look at in this past year is if they looked at this and said, this is about a man and a woman and not the president and the intern. He was very tender with me. He was very affectionate.
You say that you cried and the president cried. When did the president cry?
I know people make fun of him for having said, I feel your pain, but I think he genuinely means it. The first time that I remember was when he talked about the first loss of the American soldier in Bosnia and how responsible he felt for that. So there was the time when I asked him to clarify the relationship, whether it was, you know, only for sexual reasons or not early on, and he got upset at the notion that I might even think that, and tears came to his eyes. He cried when he broke up with me on May 24th. It was an intense relationship. At least that was how I saw it.
Why do you think he needed you?
I would imagine that it is very difficult to be the President of the United States. I would imagine that you have a tremendous, tremendous amount of pressure. And that sometimes you just need a piece of normalcy.
Can't you get that from your wife?
Sure you can.
But?
That's something for him to answer, not me. I'm sorry.
As it turns out, Bill Clinton was not Monica's only relationship during this period. And there is a startling revelation that she has kept secret all this time. We will hear more about that when we come back. There was a 10-month period when you never had the chance to be alone with Bill Clinton. But you did have another man in your life.
Continues. And now, Barbara Walters.
The big questions remain. Why did Monica Lewinsky ever confide in Linda Tripp? Why didn't Monica's mother try to break up her daughter's relationship with Bill Clinton? And why did Monica continue to stay in the relationship when the president didn't seem to want her? All in all, it was getting to be a difficult time for Monica. And for the first time tonight, you will hear a startling revelation, one of the few secrets Monica has been able to keep until now. Now, when you were at the Pentagon, there was a 10-month period when you never had the chance to be alone with Bill Clinton. But you did have another man in your life. Yes. You emailed a friend that you had a sexual relationship with an older single man named Thomas, who worked at the Pentagon. How did you feel about Thomas?
When I first met Thomas, I thought he was a brilliant, exciting man, and I enjoyed his company, and I had feelings for him, but not very strong feelings.
Did the president know that you were seeing other men?
Yes. I'd tease him about it and tell him he had competition.
There is a revelation in the new book about you that concerns this relationship with Thomas.
I think it's a very sensitive subject for a lot of people, and I think it's such a hot button for people that...
Monica was clearly uncomfortable discussing the subject during our interview, but in the Andrew Morton book, Monica's Story, she reveals that during her affair with Thomas, she became pregnant. She had an abortion, and it so upset her that she began therapy. Still in love with Bill Clinton, she says, she never told him about the pregnancy. At the best of times, you would see Bill Clinton for brief encounters. Weeks, sometimes months would go by without your seeing him. Twice he tried to break up with you. I mean, after being treated that way, Why didn't you walk away?
I wanted to, a lot of times.
Where was your self-respect? Where was your self-esteem?
I don't have the feelings of self-worth that a woman should have. And that's hard for me, and I think that's been a center of a lot of my mistakes and a lot of my pain.
When the Linda Tripp's tapes were released, there was one in which you were sobbing uncontrollably. I'll let you listen to it.
I was upset. I'm upset like I am now. I can't take it anymore.
I know.
I just can't.
Oh my God.
It's too much for one person.
Oh, it is too much for one person. Yes, it is. Yeah.
Do you remember what made you feel that way?
I think it was a time when I was very frustrated with the president and with Betty Curry.
Tough days. During this time, Monica began to confide in a Pentagon co-worker, Linda Tripp, who had also previously worked at the White House. Tripp was known to gossip about the president and about goings-on at the White House. How did it come about in the first place that you began to confide in Linda Tripp?
This is actually something that I don't think people have really understood in this past year, and it's important to understand it. I had met Linda Tripp from in working at the Pentagon. I think when I found out that she had worked at the White House, it was sort of, that was an attraction for me. That was clearly where I was longing to be, and was hoping and thinking I was going to go back to. She would say things to me like, oh, you're just the type of girl the president would like, and you should think about going back to the White House. I bet you could have an affair with him. And it was after the election, and I saw her in the cafeteria, and I thought, oh God, if she says to me one more time, now you can go back to the White House. Now the election's over. This is it. This is your time. Here I am dying inside from the loss of the relationship. And finally I said, look, I had a relationship with him and it's over. So you don't need to be thinking this is going to happen again.
And the floodgates opened from then on.
Yes.
Yeah. You had also told other people, you told 10 other people that you had this relationship with the president. I mean, big mouth. Why did you want people to know?
I trusted my girlfriends implicitly, and I think that's the kind of relationship that I have with my close friends. I mean, and I guess probably the biggest piece of evidence that I looked at Bill Clinton as more of a man than as a president was that I talked about him as I would any other guy. Listen to the message he left. He's so cute. This is what he did. This is what happened. What should I wear?
Did you ever tell the president that you told other people?
No. In fact, the opposite. I told him that I didn't tell anybody.
But Monica's mother was also in on the secret and was worried about her daughter's fragile state of mind. To this day, they have a very close and loving relationship. But what is not clear is how much the mother actually knew about her daughter's affair with the president.
My mom knew that I was involved with him, not, I think necessarily, I don't think she understood it to be in such a sexual way that it was. I clearly did not discuss details of that relationship with my mom. We have an amazing relationship, and she has been misportrayed almost worse than I have in some ways, and it has been very painful for me. She is a very wonderful mom and a good woman. And I think anybody who watches this interview and says to themselves, gee, Monica's different from how she's been portrayed for a year, well, the same goes for my mom.
I know it's very hard for a mother to say to a daughter, you can't do this. But did your mother try to break off this relationship with you?
Yes. Yes, she did. But anyone who knows me well knows that I'm stubborn. And from the time I was 2 years old, one of my first phrases was with my hands on my hips, "You are not the boss of me." And I've been that way ever since.
When we come back, the infamous blue dress, the item that finally proved to the world that Bill Clinton and Monica Lewinsky indeed had an intimate relationship. Why did Monica keep it? What many people find disgusting is that you didn't just take this dress and send it out to be dry cleaned. There have probably been more questions asked about the now infamous stained blue dress than about almost any other aspect of Monica and the president's affair. Without this dress, there might never have been proof that there even was an affair. But why did Monica keep the dress in the first place? Did she consider it a souvenir of her love? And why on earth did she confide in Linda Tripp? The answers now from Monica in her own words. The famous blue dress.
What dress?
That now famous blue dress. On February 28, 1997, Betty Curry called and invited Monica to attend the president's radio address at the White House. Monica ran home to her Watergate apartment and put on a blue dress from the Gap. And then, after the address, and for the first time in 10 months, she was alone with Bill Clinton in the Oval Office. This was the most intimate of their meetings. On this occasion, they went further than ever before, and Lewinsky's dress became stained in the process. Monica says she went home that afternoon, put the dress away, and never noticed the stains until the next time she thought of wearing it. What did you think the stains were?
At first I didn't know, and I thought, oh, this is dirty, that's weird. And then it came to my mind that the last time I had worn it was when I was with the president. And I thought, oh no. And it was funny to me. The whole subject of the dress has been one of those topics this past year that I know it's a lot more fun to think that I kept it as a souvenir, to think that I cherished this and I would never clean it, and I was some sick, deranged person who kept this as a trophy, but that's not what it was.
What many people find disgusting is that you didn't just take this dress and send it out to be dry cleaned.
What happened was, I have a lot of clothes, and the next time when I had gone to put on this dress, when I believe it was the time that I noticed it was soiled, it didn't fit. I'd gained weight. So it was sort of this frustration, oh, this thing doesn't fit anyway. I threw it in the closet. And it was funny. I had mentioned it to my girlfriends. We laughed about it. With one, I even joked, gee, maybe he'll pay for the dry cleaning. It was, and it was...
Never thought that this was something that was serious or incriminating.
Of course not. It wasn't an issue. I was never going to talk about this relationship.
Why did you tell Linda Tripp about this dress?
Because it was funny. It was funny.
And then she told you, save this dress.
Yes.
Listen to this tape.
I don't trust the people around him, and I just want you to have that for you. Put it in a baggie, put it in a Ziploc bag. What for, though? I don't know, Monica. It's just this nagging, awful feeling I have in the back of my head.
So Monica did save the dress, and this is one secret she says she kept, even from her mother, until Linda Tripp told prosecutors about it. One of the other things that people don't understand is you gave the dress to your mother. What kind of a woman saves a dress?
There have been a lot of things that have been said about me, my mother, and my family that are not true. And that is one of them. My mom did not know about this dress until the rest of the world first heard of this dress. And it was, I think, a few weeks into this nightmare, and it was on the TV, and she turned to me and she said, "What is this about this dress? Is this one of these crazy things that they keep talking about?" And I looked at her and I said, "Well," and she said, "Well, where is it?" And I said, "In your apartment in New York." And she just looked at me, and we were both so paralyzed with fear, and I didn't have immunity yet, and I was terrified of the way I was being watched, how I was being monitored. I didn't know, and I thought, okay, I could wash this, I could destroy this. I knew at that point, I knew that was obstruction of justice, and I was in enough trouble already.
Ken Starr's people didn't know you had this dress. Why did you turn it over to them?
Because I had to. Getting and keeping my immunity became very important to me, and I needed to take care of myself and my family. No one else was worried about me.
Did you feel you had to then tell the truth about absolutely everything, including this dress?
You bet. And I did.
If it had not been for the DNA evidence, the president might never have admitted his relationship with you.
Mm-hmm.
Linda Tripp now says she did you a favor.
No. If there was a parade and I said to you, "Ms. Walters, come stand here for the best view of this parade," and I planned actually secretly to push a piano out of the window to fall on your head, and then at the last minute I pulled you out of the way so that the piano didn't hit you, and then said, "I saved your life." It's ridiculous. It's ludicrous. This dress is one of the most humiliating things that has happened to me. Every man that I have met since this thing has happened eventually says to me, "So what's the real story with the dress?" And it's humiliating. I wish I hadn't had it.
Will this dress be returned to you?
I don't know.
If it is turned over to you as your property, what will you do with it?
I'll burn it.
When we come back, what Monica calls D-Day. The president tells Monica that the relationship is over. What did he say? And how did she handle it? You would scream at him sometimes over the phone. I mean, you would scream at him in person. You would threaten him. The President of the United States.
2020 continues. Once again, Barbara Walters.
We return now to Monica Lewinsky in her own words. What had begun as a relationship of intimate encounters and amorous phone calls was now turning sour. The president, it seems, was trying to find a way out. You will hear an amazing admission, Monica says, he made to her about his marriage. And you will learn now how the unraveling of her romance turned into the most terrifying year of her life. Let's turn to May 24th, 1997. This was a year and a half about after your relationship with Bill Clinton began. It's what you call D-Day, which stood for?
Dump day.
Dump Monica.
Yes.
In breaking up with you that day, the president confided in you as he had not before.
He talked about difficulties that he's had in his life and in his private life.
Monica later told investigators that Bill Clinton said he had led a life of lies and deception ever since he was a small boy. According to Monica, the president said that he had been with hundreds of women until the time he was 40, and at that time he considered divorce and leaving politics, but decided to try to make his marriage work and to, quote, be good. According to Monica, he told her that they could remain friends and that he could do a lot for her, but that their relationship was not right in the eyes of God.
I was heartbroken. I didn't want the relationship to end. You want so badly to hold on to this thing that you want, and it hurts.
You said that when you left Bill Clinton's office that day, you sobbed in the arms of Betty Curry. And there were times when she escorted you into the president's office and left and so forth. Do you think that Betty Curry was an enabler?
I certainly know that this relationship could not have continued the way it did when I was at the Pentagon and the president was obviously at the White House without Betty.
In retrospect, do you think that Betty Curry knew about your relationship with the president?
She strikes me as the type of woman that probably wouldn't even have allowed herself to think that. She certainly knew that there was a personal relationship there, something that caused me great happiness and great distress.
A scene that has been talked about and written about was when you went to the White House, an unscheduled visit to see Bill Clinton. And you were told at the gate that he was meeting with a woman, a journalist named Eleanor Mondale. You got mad, you stalked off, and angry Bill Clinton called you later and said, "Monica, you made a stink." He was furious. Where were you at that point in your head?
I was at the end of my rope. I mean, this was... I don't know that people can understand the push and pull of this relationship. I mean, how confusing it would be for me to, on the one hand, have someone saying things to you, "I promise this, I promise that, I care about you, I don't want to hurt you, I want to take care of you," and then the actions are something different. And then you get into a fight, and then you make up. And then he says everything's okay and I miss you, and then he doesn't want to see you. It's pretty tough emotionally.
Towards the end of the relationship with Bill Clinton, you had many arguments. You would scream at him sometimes over the phone. You would threaten him. The President of the United States?
I didn't see him as the President of the United States. I saw him as a man, and that was how I treated him.
Were you then out of control?
Mm-hmm. Yes. I think that's, for someone like me, who's a very passionate, loving woman, I think you often get close to that line. And I went through a very difficult period, and I could not recognize that I needed help. And I needed to be on some sort of antidepressant.
Much later on, after everything with Ken Starr, after the affidavit, this past year, you were put on medication, yes?
Yes.
One of the things that perhaps people don't understand is that once he broke off the sexual relationship, Bill Clinton continued to have conversations with you, meetings with you.
Yes.
It isn't the end is the end and that's it.
No, no. But I also have to add that there was another element to all this, which was my job. And I had lost my job, and I had been promised that I could come back.
You know, other women have had sexual relationships, and they don't expect that out of it is going to come a job.
I never expected that out of this relationship would come a job.
But you
never
then
in a million
said,
years.
"You got to help me get a job."
No, what happened was that he promised me on April 6th, 1996, when I had to leave the White House,
Okay.
He promised me, and he said to me, "I promise you, if I win in November, I'll bring you back like this."
Okay, and he didn't, so he didn't keep his promise.
Mm-hmm.
So you could have said he didn't keep his promise, he didn't get me a job, so be it, but you held him to that.
I did. I did.
Towards the end of this relationship, you were a real pain in the butt.
You bet. You bet.
So the president breaks up with you. Finally, you decide you want to get out of Washington. And Linda Tripp suggested that you ask Vernon Jordan, the president's very close friend, a very powerful man, and he helped you look for a job. Now, you have been very adamant that Vernon Jordan's help was not in any way a payoff for your silence. But then tell us why you think he was helping you.
I don't think I've ever said that I thought Mr. Jordan's assistance had nothing to do with the fact that the president and I were at least friends. But I was never promised a job for my silence.
Your feeling was that the president had said to Vernon Jordan, help her? Do you think that Vernon Jordan knew that you had an affair with Bill Clinton?
I don't know.
Well, you told him at one point something about it. What did you say?
After I'd asked him if he thought the president would always be married to the First Lady, and he said, yes, he should. Yes, he will, as he should. But then Mr. Jordan said, but maybe you'll have an affair with him when he's out of office. And that was just startling to me. And I said to him, well, I already did have an affair with him, but we didn't have sex or everything but sex or something like that.
An affair without sex, still called an affair?
I think so. I consider that I had an affair with the president, and we didn't have sex. Well, intercourse. So.
Monica, I never know where to go with that when I read about it. Did you ever try to have intercourse?
Uh-huh.
What happened?
I actually had always thought we eventually would. I mean, there really was never a question for me. I think most normal people would think, well, sure, you're going to have an affair, you're going to make love, and it's going to be great, or you hope it's great. But when we first spoke about it, actually it was during the election, and he said, I can't do that. And I said, what do you mean you can't do that? And he said, well, when you get to be my age, you'll understand there are consequences for those kinds of things. And I got really upset, because to me, that completes a relationship. I felt it was unfair to me, having been in this relationship and having been a part of this, that I would never know what it was like to be that intimate with him. But I don't think we ever tried. I think I tried to get him to want to have sex with me.
Okay, but it never actually happened. In December of 1997, more than 8 months after the end of your physical relationship with Bill Clinton, Paula Jones' attorneys named you as a potential witness in their civil suit against the president. The president called to tell you this at about 2 o'clock in the morning. He often called you late at night. Were you frightened?
Terribly. Terribly.
Were you amazed?
Yes, I was astounded. I mean, this really was the beginning of the nightmare.
But the nightmare would only get worse, as Monica found herself facing threats of prison with what seemed to her no way out.
I have never been so afraid my entire life.
As her romance fell apart, Monica at first thought she could control events. There was a devious game of hide and seek with gifts that the president had given Monica, and that had been subpoenaed by Paula Jones's lawyers. Most of those gifts wound up under the bed of the president's secretary, Betty Curry. Curry's story and Lewinsky's differ as to whose idea that was. And then there was Linda Tripp. When she said she would tell the truth about Lewinsky's affair if asked by lawyers for Paula Jones, Monica panicked. She begged Tripp to conceal the relationship, even offering her mother's vacation home to Tripp as an inducement to lie. And Monica later gave Tripp 3 pages of notes, the so-called talking points, to use as possible guidelines for Tripp's affidavit. Let's talk about those infamous talking points. Now, Linda Tripp says that she believes that the notion that you wrote those on your own is about as likely as you co-authoring the Gettysburg Address with Lincoln.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you testified that you wrote these yourself.
Mm-hmm.
So her question is, and the question of other people is, how were you able to use those legal terms? I mean, you're not that informed, you're not that smart. Did anyone help you with these talking points?
No. I had been working on my own affidavit with my attorney at the time. I've been told by the prosecutors and by my own attorneys I should go to law school. I guess I have a knack for it. I sat down at the computer and I typed it out.
You finally did file a false affidavit saying that you did not have a sexual relationship with the president. Did you know that you were committing perjury?
No, I think I knew I was lying, but I had no knowledge. I mean, I had no idea what all the different elements of perjury were at the time.
Were you trying to protect the president?
I was trying to protect myself and the president and my family.
The president never told you to lie.
No.
But he also never told you to tell the truth.
Correct.
You told Linda Tripp that one of the main reasons that you were going to deny the sexual relationship in your affidavit was for fear of your life. You said, "I would not cross those people for fear of my life." Who were those people, and what did you think they would do?
That was not a very truthful statement that I made to her at that time on the tapes. I think I was trying to get Linda to keep my secret, and trying to use anything and anybody that would do that. So whether it was my mom, whether it was Mr. Jordan, whether it was something the president said, whether it was fear, whatever it was that I could do, whether it was a condo in Australia, I didn't want her to tell my secret.
Linda Tripp recently said that you passed on White House threats to her. Did you do that?
No.
January 16th, 1998. Linda Tripp asked you to meet her at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel near the Pentagon. There you were confronted not only by Linda Tripp, but by members of Ken Starr's staff and by FBI agents. What happened that day?
My attorneys have agreed with the Office of the Independent Counsel that I would not discuss the details of that day in this interview.
Due to her unusual immunity agreement with Ken Starr, Monica is not allowed to discuss that day with members of the news media, which includes me. But her lawyers interpreted the immunity agreement in such a way that she was able to tell British author Andrew Morton about it. And it is described in vivid detail in his book. 2 armed FBI agents led Monica to room 1012 in the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, where there were 6 members of Ken Starr's staff waiting for her. For hours on end, they threw questions at her. Monica was threatened with 27 years in prison for perjury, witness tampering, and obstruction of justice. But even worse for Monica, she says, the prosecutors also threatened her mother with criminal charges because of statements Monica had made on the Linda Tripp tapes. Those statements, if true, might have implicated her mother in the obstruction of justice. But the prosecutors promised Lewinsky immunity then and there if she told them everything, and wore a wire to record conversations with Vernon Jordan, Betty Curry, and possibly even the president. The confrontation, according to the book, was at times tense and ugly. Monica describes one prosecutor as a revolting specimen of humanity, another as a pit bull who mocked her when she asked to call her mother. And when she wanted to call her lawyer, prosecutors discouraged her. After 12 hours resisting the demands of prosecutors, Monica's family hired attorney Bill Ginsberg, and Monica finally went home. You learned that day that Linda Tripp had taped your conversation. You didn't know then that she had taped other things. But how did you feel when you learned for the first time that she taped you?
Gutted and violated and betrayed and scared.
I understand that you're restricted in the events of those days and what happened when you were in the room with Ken Starr's people and the FBI agents. But you can tell us how you were feeling. How did you feel that day? What were your emotions?
Oh, I was petrified. I have never been so afraid in my entire life. I wanted to die. I wanted to kill everybody in the room. I was just very, very scared.
As we talk now, today, is there anything you're afraid of?
I'm afraid of doing something to lose my immunity and being prosecuted or having my family prosecuted.
You mean you still think you could go to jail?
I learned things this past year and saw things this past year that I didn't know happened in this country. And yes, I worry about that.
Have you ever met Ken Starr? Have you ever talked to Ken Starr?
No.
What do you think of Ken Starr? We're not talking about what happened that day. We're talking about your feelings.
I'm too afraid to answer that. I'm sorry.
Monica's fears only intensified. Ken Starr's prosecutors surrounded her. And when her story became known, the media besieged her. And she seriously considered suicide.
Behind the name Monica Lewinsky, there's a person and there is a family.
We now turn to the bleakest and most desperate months for Monica Lewinsky. Every detail of her life became public knowledge. She didn't have immunity from prosecution, and her lawyer, Bill Ginsburg, she says, was failing her. And worst of all, the president was denying that he'd had any relations with her. He almost seemed not to know her name. But at the beginning, her greatest fear was what Ken Starr's prosecutors might do to her and to the president. After this session with the prosecutors and the FBI, you and your mother went back to her apartment at the Watergate. Tell me about that night.
We were manic, and we were so afraid that any minute we were going to be arrested, and not knowing. For me, I was constantly thinking at that point, how am I going to protect the president? How am I going to let him know? How is he going to be helped? And I knew he was going to do the deposition the next day, and I was racking my brains trying to think of anything. Could I get in a taxi and go to Betty Curry's house? Could I call Bruce Lindsay, whom I had never met or spoken to? Who could I call? What could I do? Could I go stand outside where he was going to do the deposition and hold a sign? Don't do it. If anything.
What did you do?
That night, I couldn't do anything. I couldn't put myself or my mother in that jeopardy.
Did you think of running away?
Mm-hmm. We figured that that all the airports would be staked out, and that it's my mom lay awake all night watching me sleep and made me take a shower with the door open. And
because
she didn't want me to hurt myself.
She was afraid you might do yourself harm, kill yourself? That bad?
I felt very responsible.
Responsible for what?
For everything that was going to happen and that had happened. And I didn't want him to get into trouble.
You were worried about Bill Clinton? More than about yourself? More than about your mother?
No. I was worried about my mom more than I was worried about the president. And then I was worried about the president. And then I was worried about myself.
And then 5 days later, the story broke. Everyone in the country now knew Monica Lewinsky.
Unfortunately.
Did Betty coach the president? Hey, pal, get your arms off her.
I don't even know how to begin to describe what it was, but it was to see my face on TV, to read my name in the newspaper, to see and know that people are learning about my little relationship, my private relationship, and that there were all these people that I cared about were going to be in trouble.
You've told friends that at one time or another, your mother and your father, because of things that were revealed, the most personal things about them, that each of them considered taking their own lives? It was that bad? They did?
People have no idea what this has done. What this has done, that behind the name Monica Lewinsky, there's a person and there is a family, and there has been so much pain that has been caused by all this. And it was so destructive. It was so destructive.
I don't want to cause you more pain as we talk, but one of the lowest points of this past year has to be when your mother was forced to testify, or asked to testify before the grand jury, and she broke down and sobbed on the stand.
A mother should be forced to testify against her daughter.
Monica says she could not have gotten through this past year without her mother and her father, whom she describes as her Rock of Gibraltar. Through much of the early part of the year, she also relied on a family friend, attorney Bill Ginsburg.
I would like Monica to be free and out of jeopardy. That's what I'd like to see as soon as possible.
I want to ask you a little bit about Bill Ginsburg. In the beginning, he was on television, and it seemed he was very helpful. As time went on, what do you think of Bill Ginsburg's role?
I agree with you that at first he was, I think his motives were in the right place.
Well, joining us now is Monica Lewinsky's attorney, William Ginsburg.
But unfortunately, I think he got bitten by the bug.
I want some goddamn privacy.
It became more about Bill Ginsburg than it did about my well-being and my welfare.
Do you think that Bill Ginsburg did you harm?
Yes, I do.
I want to play a videotape for you, a very famous videotape.
I did not have sexual relations with that woman, Miss Lewinsky. I never told anybody to lie, not a single time, never.
What was your reaction when you saw this?
That woman part of the quote was so very harsh, and it was hurtful. I could see how angry he was, and I didn't think he needed to go about denying the relationship in this manner. That was disappointing. I think he could have taken a higher road in his denial.
How?
It still would have been he said, she said, if he had said, Monica and I were friends, she's a great woman, she's a bright woman, I don't know why she's saying these things.
So Monica was bewildered and hurt, but did she still love Bill Clinton? Indeed, does she still love Bill Clinton? And what does she think of Linda Tripp? Linda Tripp says she would like to give you a hug. What would you like to give Linda Tripp? We are now almost at the end of our story. Where does Monica Lewinsky go from here? Will there ever be a job? Will there ever be a man in her life? Can she get Bill Clinton out of her heart and mind? And can she ever live down the reputation that it was she who pursued Bill Clinton? I'd like to show you another tape.
And said that she had come on to him and made a demand for sex, that he had rebuffed her, turned her down, and that she threatened him. And he said that she said to him that she was called the stalker by her peers.
Sidney Blumenthal, the aide to President Clinton, saying that you were a stalker. The whole country then felt, if they hadn't before, that you were a stalker. Now, Bill Clinton deliberately smeared you.
Mm-hmm. That was the defining moment when I really knew and fell out of love with him. And that I knew at that moment that he was definitely not the person that I had ever thought he was.
This past summer, you were offered immunity, finally. And you were then required to discuss every intimate detail, every sexual detail of your relationship before a grand jury. It must have been excruciating.
It's very, very violating. Very violating.
There is the question of why you offered so many intimate details to the prosecutor. I mean, why, for example, tell them about that cigar business, you know?
Well,
they would never have known, would they? You hadn't told them?
No, they did know.
They did know.
They did know, especially from calling my girlfriends before the grand jury.
You teased about this with your girlfriends?
Well, sure. Well, I mean, that's the kind of relationship that we had. And still do have. We're tight, and so I was afraid if I sort of just answered the question as they asked them and didn't give the full information, that then they'd think I wasn't telling the truth and they'd take my immunity away.
Your father had told me, we did an interview together before President Clinton's admission, that he didn't know if you had sex with the president, and he didn't want to know. And then this testimony where he must have known.
And I think it's hard for him when the man who hurt your baby is the President of the United States. You can't go out and express your anger, or you can't go beat the guy up. That was a low moment.
Indeed, I did have a relationship with Miss Lewinsky that was not appropriate. In fact, it was wrong. It constituted a critical lapse in judgment and a personal failure on my part for which I am solely and completely responsible.
You're watching this now. What do you think?
I felt like a piece of trash. I felt dirty, and I felt used, and I was disappointed.
Felt he was being serviced? Was the impression?
That was the impression he gave.
In retrospect, do you think that Bill Clinton really cared about you?
Some days I think yes, and some days I think no.
Do you think he has any genuine remorse? Or do you think he's just sorry that he got caught?
When I think of the person that I thought was Bill Clinton, I think he has genuine remorse. When I think of the person that I now see as 100% politician, I think he's sorry he got caught.
How did you spend your time this past year?
I worried. I worried, but a few months into it, my stepmom, Barbara, got me into knitting. So I started to knit, and I've knit quite a many scarves and still trying to finish my first sweater. So
everybody you know has a scarf?
Pretty much so. Pretty much so.
So here's the cover of Newsweek, Monica's His Time.
That was very strange for me to see.
Monica told me she read and followed almost everything, even the most disparaging stories. Monica, the tabloids were terrible to you, especially about your weight. Tubby temptress, portly pepper pot. Did the weight stuff bother you?
Of course. That was painful.
Hi, I'm meeting a friend here.
Your name?
Monica Lewinsky.
Oh, yes.
How did you feel about the jokes, all the comics telling jokes?
Well, some of the jokes I've laughed at.
And the humidity, man, I'll tell you, people's clothes are stickier than Monica Lewinsky's. Man, it was just...
The secretary said she knew something was sort of suspicious when she found herself using phrases like, "Sir, your 3 a.m. is here."
I have a pretty good sense of humor. And I've even been rumored to tell a joke or two.
Any of these jokes you can share with us?
No.
Not too clean, huh?
No,
Okay.
not on this time slot.
If her testimony is truthful, then the president committed the offenses alleged in the articles of impeachment.
Then came the president's impeachment trial. Up until that time, people had never seen Monica tell any part of her own story.
You, Monica S. Lewinsky, do swear or affirm that the evidence...
She did, in a videotaped deposition played at the Senate trial. Some of the House prosecutors said that you were trying to protect the president. Were you, even then, trying to protect Bill Clinton?
No. I was not trying to hurt him, and I was not trying to protect him.
So here we are. It's almost the end of the story. The president is going on with his life. Where do you go from here?
I don't know. I think I have a lot of healing to do.
Are you still on medication?
Yes.
And this is antidepressant medication?
Yes.
Do you have any goals? Is there anything you'd like to do?
I'd like to make a contribution to society, a good contribution this time, I think. And I know it's corny, but I'd really like to find the right person and have a meaningful relationship and get married and have kids. That's really important to me.
Any man in your life now?
No Prince Charming yet.
You and I met before today when you first agreed to do an interview with me, and we had an initial meeting, and you said to me then that you'd seen Dr. Joyce Brothers on television. And that she had said, can you imagine a young man bringing home Monica Lewinsky to his parents and saying, I'm going to marry Monica Lewinsky? That really bothered you.
That was a bad day. That was a bad day. There have been some nights where I have just stayed awake crying, thinking about how am I ever going to have any sense of normalcy again in my life.
Linda Tripp says she would like to give you a hug. What would you like to give Linda Tripp?
Oh, nothing.
What do you think of Linda Tripp?
I pity her. I would hate to be her. She is not me.
Have you learned anything from this experience?
I've learned a lot. I have learned a lot. I've learned how important family is and how to honor that and to cherish that. I have learned the true meaning of friendship. I have really my family and friends have been amazing.
If you had to do it all over again, would you have had the relationship with Bill Clinton?
There's some days that I regret that the relationship ever started, and there's some days that I just regret that I ever confided in Linda Tripp.
Monica, are you still in love with Bill Clinton?
No.
Sure?
Mm-hmm.
Over?
Sometimes I have warm feelings, sometimes I'm proud of him still, and sometimes I hate his guts, and he makes me sick.
What will you tell your children when you have them?
Mommy made a big mistake.
And that is the understatement of the year. For ABC News, I'm Barbara Walters. Good night.